We show up in Africa, in Zambia. We have a couple-hour drive. We have to meet some people so that we can get to our final destination because it's so remote.
You gotta concentrate for sure. Stick on the left, pretty weird. Driver's seat on the right, pretty weird. Driving on the left, pretty weird. But we did okay.
Then we pulled into Joe's place. It was after dark, so I was pretty tired. We had been on flight all day and just wanting to hang up the hammock and lay it down.
And we show up and we met Joe, and it turns out he's a great guy. He has an amazing property right on the outskirts of Marundu. Has a beautiful orchard and a little farm, great little garden. And he invited us in. His whole family was great. We set up our hammocks and laid down for an interesting night. It turned out to be a bit on the cold side. We all stayed warm enough to have a good night's sleep so we can wake up and have a big day the next day.
And I was really glad that he took us on another tour the next morning with the daylight and got to see all the fruit trees and just learned about the history of the house and his family history there.
When we woke up, we had a nice little tour of Joe's property, and he took us around to his orchard. He's very proud of his trees and his garden. We got to see an owl that's very rare. He has pipes going everywhere. He has more water than my property has. And the water pressure is amazing. The shower facilities is just great.
The son there, Shalom was his name, he wanted to come with us to go to the church, and so he hopped in the back of the pickup truck and off we went to church. So we got there as the choir was singing, and it was absolutely gorgeous. We walked in and it was really, really powerful experience. Heartfelt voices, you could tell everybody, they weren't singing because they had to, they were singing because that was their way of doing their worship.
Watching these folks worship and have their service. The vast majority of the people that live in that area live a pretty tough life, and there's no certainty of what's going to happen tomorrow, and they are pleading with their Maker.
They go to Sunday service and they are just gleaming with excitement. They're gleaming with energy. It's the biggest thing that they care about. It's the highlight of their week.
And they welcomed us in and they fed us afterward, this amazing local food, shima, all chicken and sausage, and the spread was absolutely massive. I kind of felt bad because it was so much food, and I know food is hard to come by around here, but they really wanted to show us a good time.
Their worship was amazing, very authentic and moving, but that's when I got to meet Tannen for the first time.
Tannen is somewhat of a woman of few words. However, how she talks about kind of this place, which to me seems like such a faraway place, it just seems like home to her.
After the church service, we went back to the village and put together a dinner to take to some of the families that are on the Family Partner Program.
Where we could go into the village and into a woman's home that was involved, had adopted several kids that were orphaned. The mom's name was Violet. She had an adopted girl named Violet. She had maybe 8 children total that she was in charge of.
We drove all the way from one side of where the school is to the other side of the village. He ran behind the truck. It must have been a couple of miles, and he just stayed in there's a little hole. My nickname is Size, or Sizey, and he just, Size, give me some chicken.
It was amazing to see what they could do with the space that they have. The space was very small. But you know, they just welcomed us in, and there were quite a few of us, and we brought the food, and they were very appreciative that we had brought dinner over. She felt very pampered that she didn't have to, you know, figure out dinner and cook for the whole family. You know, we just sat and talked about the thing that is universal, which is food.
I went with Nate and sat with Tannen and Rosemary's family. Rosemary is very special to Tannen. She has diabetes. The organization provides medication for her on a monthly basis, and the Family Partner Program checks up on her and makes sure that her insulin levels are acceptable. It's very, very difficult here. It takes quite an effort to make sure that Rosemary is staying healthy, and Tannen sit with Rosemary and have dinner and talk about having diabetes and what they need to do.
We came to them with dinner. We brought them trays of food that Eric and Mike helped make. Rosemary's grandmother went the extra mile and matched us on the food. I mean, she made like 3 dishes herself, and we already had enough food for a feast. This lady loves a lot. A lot, and she's probably giving Rosemary and these other kids such a beautiful home in comparison to what it could be. She loves this much and still needs help taking care of Rosemary's diabetes. I'm very, very grateful for the fact that Rosemary has that aid through the Debbie Joy School and through the Entrepreneurial Foundation for the Greater Good, and all these aspects are helping this girl and sponsoring her.
So that was a very touching experience. We went back, stayed another night at Joe's property, got up early and went over to the school grounds for a day of sports with the kids.
It's funny because when you pull in, there's a child. You blink and there's 10. You blink again and there's 50. And they just love that you're there and they want to play with you, and we got a couple of soccer balls out. And that's when they all kind of came over and grabbed soccer balls and started dribbling, and I like to play soccer, so I started playing with some of them. And there was one in particular that just kept asking me to try to get the ball from him. And that was my first introduction to Prince.
Once you saw the energy of the kids and the staff and how excited everybody was, and I was amazed at how organized it was, because when you put that many kids in one area with each other outside with sports, it can just turn into pure chaos, and I never saw that. As excited as everybody was, they listened to the instructions, they got started, and it was just smiles and energy from there kind of through the athletics.
At the same time, on the school grounds, we were digging a deep bore water well to provide water for the school and for the surrounding neighbors. So we got to watch the process of initially digging through the dirt, and they would take a sample of the soil each time they went 6 meters down. They would have to add one more segment to the drilling rig.
You know, before I came to Zambia, I had a lot of friends asking questions about how deep does it go? How big is the hole? Generally, I pretty much had no idea how these wells worked. We watched it from start to finish. Watched the truck come in with all of the rigging that it takes to dig, and it turns out the hole is about 150 feet deep. They basically put a hole 150 feet deep. The outside of that keeps the dirt out and lets the water seep in to the middle of the hole, just like the old well did that you build out of bricks. Then they drop a separate pipe down through it and pump the water up and out with a hand pump. It's all real simple technology, which I loved to see. It's made out of just about indestructible materials, mostly galvanized steel, which lives for a long time in just about any condition.
Once they hit water, oh my gosh, that was like a whole moment right there. Water finally starts shooting out. All the kids that were playing football started to run over. The people that were from the village just standing by, they started to run over. It was an event, and I think to these people, they know how important that well is going to be in their day-to-day lives.
We're not just sending money off to nowhere and don't really know what's going on. A lot of programs, you can donate 50 bucks a month, 100 bucks a month, whatever, and you get a monthly or a yearly report with a picture or something like that. Here, you come, you meet the people, you hold their hands, you hug them, you eat with them, you do activities with them, you really get to know them, and you see how the money is getting spent. I can say that everything that I've seen shows me that the money being spent is being spent extremely efficiently. You know, we're putting them in now at $2,200 a piece, and compared to other organizations spending $5,000 to $10,000, we can put in 4 wells for the price that cost other organizations to put 1 well in. So the next day, the plan was to install the actual pumps that go in the deep bore water wells. So we got up in the morning and Joe had already ordered all the pumps. They're on his back patio, putting them together and making sure all the parts were there for assembly so that by the time we got out to location, everything was kind of already set up. So it's a very simple system. A couple of different parts go together with stainless steel. These things are built like tanks. Somebody asked me earlier today, you guys are putting in these wells, but what's going to happen over the years after you leave? One of the answers is they're built to last. The other answer is we have a water engineer that lives on the edge of the village and understands these pumps very well, has installed a ton of them, and knows the parts that will need to be replaced, and he'll be taking care of them for us.
And Uncle Jim and also Joe are very instrumental in picking strategic spots so that the well will have 360 degrees of population around it and not just be on the outskirts where it will only help people 180 degrees around the well. The more people use the well, the better. The more you use them, the better the water gets. That was one of the things that I wasn't sure about. How difficult was the pump going to be to use, as far as how much strength was it going to take? I mean, you're pumping water up from 150 feet down. I thought, well, maybe they're going to have, the kids aren't going to be able to get water when they're just out themselves running around. So it was really neat to see that the kids can use it. Also, I think are happy that it's closer to home than it's ever been in a lot of cases.
This is the water for the people. This well project is going to touch a lot of people's lives.
We also got to see the other volunteers that had come with the Debbie Joy School. They were building a computer lab. And it sounds pretty odd to have a computer lab at a school in the middle of a village that barely has any electricity, barely has water.
And he said, well, do you need any laptops? My hobby is to use the ones that are no longer under warranty, and I fix them and I donate them. That's just what I do in my spare time. So we brought over 5 or 6 of them. DHL really liked what I was doing, and now I'm doing it full time. I go to Central America, I go to South America, help distribute these things, and they really don't know how to get started in, Africa. And I said, I can help. The higher ups in DHL are interested in finding ways to distribute these, where they're going to be used. We started with our own school, but we have now found there's probably 500 schools that could use them.
That in this day and age, these kids are going to have computer skills to have a chance at integrating into a larger economy. DHL has been gracious enough to donate about 20 laptops.
Private education facilities don't have a computer lab like this. And if there's even one kid who makes it out of Marundu and becomes some computer developer or some software engineer, the next Bill Gates could be out of Marundu. I think DHL did a mighty fine thing, a very big thing by doing that.
And we also got a chance to go to the possible new site of the Debbie Joy School. Last year we had some complications with the site of the school where it's been for 8 years. Tannen and Uncle Jim just keep on going forward. Really, really intense how much they have gone through, and they just keep working for this community. A facility that was used by a skills training center that was run by a Catholic organization, but for one reason or another, it shut down a year or 2 ago. Uncle Jim has talked with a couple of different people that are interested in us taking over the site and establishing a permanent place for the Debbie Joy School, so we wanted to take a tour of that.
We hear all the time, for a cost of coffee a day, you could support you know, this child and this child. I'm just always skeptical of those because I've heard statistics of how much money actually goes to the overhead. For every dollar, maybe only 10 or 15 cents is actually going to help that child. The reason I'm involved with this organization is because 100%. Every dollar that you give goes to help those kids, which in turn, you know, they're getting education, they're getting nutrition. We're feeding them once a day, which some of these kids may go 2-3 days without actually eating anything. If I know every dollar that I spend is going to go help Prince or someone like Prince, because the school, they're taking kids that don't have parents, they're at risk. Like I said, they don't have anything. And for the whole year, it only costs about $42 a month. That's getting what Jim, VanZwieten, and Tannen have been able to do with their resources and their team, and all volunteer, so that every dollar donated goes to help these kids. That's amazing. When we left, we had a pretty special moment. I had someone interpret what I was saying to him, and you could see the countenance on his face, like he realized at that moment, because we'd been there several days, that each morning he would see me. And I asked the interpreter to just let him know that I would see him next year and not to worry. And we hugged. And God willing, I hope that will come true. He's pretty special. So that's why I want to be involved in this project.
For those days, we felt really connected to the people of Africa and to the people of Zambia. And we knew that we were going to kind of be stepping out of that now. We missed it for the first day especially. I missed that connection, that feeling that you're one of them, you know, and it's no us and them, it's just all of us here working on a common goal. All of the transfers were very smooth, thanks in most part to Eric. So far so good. And then we kind of moved off to the next chapter of our trip.
So we set out on safari, starting with Victoria Falls. Quite a sight. We got to go to the little pools right above Victoria Falls and see it from there, which not a whole lot of people get to do that, so that was really fun. We had to cross the part of the river and then jump in the pools and get to hang over the edge of one of the largest falls in the world, one of the 7 wonders of the world.
None of us really had any idea what a walking tour with the rhinos was all about. Off we went to walk with the rhinos. We showed up to a reserve. Its kind of claim to fame is that it has the only white rhinos in Zambia. Go on basically a hike in the bush to find the rhinos initially, and also look at other game, zebras, monkeys, all kinds of good stuff. Maybe after half an hour or so, we caught up with a pair of rhinos, a mother and her baby. We got to watch the two interact, and then I realized what walking with the rhinos was, which was basically kind of following behind them as they meandered through the bush. So we walked along with them for probably another half an hour, and then they made their way to a whole group of rhinos, probably another 8 of them. So we're very fortunate to be able to sit and just watch this whole group of rhinos kind of lay in the shade. It was close to midday by then and it had gotten hot. It was very cool. They're very large creatures. You think in the beginning I should be running instead of watching, but it was really a sight to see them all together.
We crossed over into Zimbabwe, had to do the border crossing, came to Imbabala Safari Camp, and we have been out on a couple of safari drives, game drives. Shortly after arriving, we got to go down and watch a whole herd of elephant cross the Zambezi over to an island. So we got to see the babies and the little ones and the moms and the dads, and a big line of elephant crossing the river. I was on safari for about 7 days last year, and I never got to see something like that. And it has turned out to be quite nice. We've seen giraffe, tons of giraffe, and we have seen a bunch of elephant, both in the river and over in another area that we've been doing game drives down. We've seen warthog, we've seen kudus. My biggest worry was coming to safari for only a couple of days and not getting lucky enough to see some animals. Tomorrow we're going to Chobe National Park in Botswana, and hopefully we're going to see some of the big cats there.
If I came here just to experience seeing the animals, seeing Victoria Falls, and not have met those kids, I would get back on a plane just to come see them, just them. Yeah, it's been great to be able to see these other things, but the highlight of the trip by far has been going to the village. That's the memory that I'll have for the rest of my life.
So if you're going to come to Africa, there is this duality. There are two worlds. A lot of people pick the comfortable way. They come to these, resorts. They come to these safari camps or hotels or whatever. They go and they book some safaris, and that's their African experience. You're not going to be terribly uncomfortable. The accommodations are pretty nice. And you get a lot out of it. You see what you see on TV when National Geographic is talking. There's usually good enough guides to let you know what's going on. But what's way better than that is going to a village that is in desperate need. They don't know what running water is. They don't know what medicine is. They don't know what electricity is, and giving them a hope. You can give them a small part of that by just lending your time and holding hands with these kids. They're not asking for much. They're asking for attention. They're asking for your time. And to give that and just see the way it has changed some of these people's lives is just amazing. And I don't think that that's something you can really pay for. The safari and the hotels and all of that has a price tag. That has a very specific amount that it costs to do. Going to change people's lives and see this excitement and this joy is priceless.
I think the most personal and the most fun way to get involved is to come. I'll be coming here at least once a year. It's a pretty cheap trip. We stay in the village for half the trip, which is minimal cost, and then the safari stuff does cost a little bit, and the airfare costs a little bit too, but all in all it's a fairly cheap trip. Every pair of hands can be used. We do all kinds of things. We bring shoes over and clothing and medical supplies and school supplies, and we do distributions, so every set of hands help. You literally can come over and meet the people. You can see the project. You can get your hands dirty, you can hug the people. It's probably the best way to get involved. If you can't do that, there are tons of other ways you can get involved.